I know it's only been a few short days, certainly in Europe and in the Middle East, North Africa, and Gulf regions. But still, have we asked ourselves in those countries, in those regions, how are we responding to COVID 19? How are we, in fact, to replicate the theme I've chosen for this YouTube channel? How are we arm wrestling with it? After all, as China removes its masks, it seems to me that Europe and other parts of the world are donning those same masks. And I suppose in different countries we have different ways of reacting to this new coronavirus. What struck me as quite interesting is a ritual that took place in India, which is in the context of the Gomutra festival. Now, I don't know if any of you listeners, watchers know what the Gomutra festival is. I'm not an expert on it, but what I do know is that it's a festival where some Hindu Indians drink the urine of cows, which apparently has some medicinal properties that would ward off physical ills and ailments. It's part of this Ayurvedic medicine, and they were using this ritual in a way to try and protect India, or at least their tribe, their community, from the coronavirus. In other parts of the world, it's been a different reaction. In Jordan, for instance, the air raid sirens meant that there was a total curfew across the whole kingdom in the hope of containing the virus. In Syria, interestingly enough, that receptacle of Arab nationalism and defiance, the Minister of Health said that the Syrian army has been able to ward off, has been able to defend the country against all viruses, germs, and terrorists. So, well, you figure out what that means. Whereas in Iraq, a story told us or informed us that the family of a dead person who had died from a severe heart attack, on the death certificate, they had put death, not heart attack, but coronavirus. Why? Because they thought that if things go in the wrong direction, all those dead in Iraq from this virus will be proclaimed as martyrs, and then the family of the deceased will get some compensation. Some people would say that's a sick mind in action. Others would say that's a very business-minded approach to the death. I don't know what you think. But in Lebanon, for instance, and Lebanon, I suppose, is a little bit like Italy. There is a sense of carefree joie de vivre despite all the problems and challenges. They too have been singing from windows and balconies and rooftops. Whereas in Saudi Arabia, for instance, a television presenter or commentator was saying that the virus is a divine intervention in order to get the Justice and Development Party of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan removed, overthrown in Turkey. We're all putting our own spin on things as we try to deal with this invisible menace, and it is an invisible menace. In fact, in the Netherlands, to come back closer to the European borders, in Netherlands, people are not necessarily queuing in front of supermarkets in order to buy anything and everything that they can lay their hands on. Probably they're doing that. But what they're also doing is they're queuing in front of the stores that sell marijuana. Now, as you might well know, marijuana is not illegal in Netherlands. And I suppose those people are saying if there's a lockdown, if there's a curfew, if we cannot move anymore, if those shops are shut by the government, then we might as well get our ample fix in order to see us through the next few difficult weeks. And what struck me, again staying in Europe, what struck me quite a bit in relation to Europe is that Belgium is now receiving millions of masks from, wait for it, not from the European Union. That sense of solidarity between the 27, 28 member states hasn't been too evident for me, but rather from China. Yes, China, that has just seen off, I suppose some would claim, the coronavirus COVID-19, is now helping people with masks. I wonder where would those precious ventilators come from and which country would actually be able to provide them to many of us in the European Union, including actually the United Kingdom, which technically, theoretically, is still part of the EU until the end of 2020. And finally, of course, if you want to go from the rather ridiculous to the totally ridiculous, I've read a few social media messages by some woman. I'm not too sure of her nationality or her domicile or where she is tweeting from and posting those media messages. But as far as she's concerned, it is all a conspiracy fabricated by Qatar in order to get this virus to promote its own agenda in the face of its enemies and foes. How sick can the human mind be? I mean, honestly, that 1 micron virus is scaring the whole world, a whole globe, a whole universe, a whole global village. And what do? We actually imagine in our conspiracy-infested world that this is a tiny but rich and efficient country who is behind it all. That is sick. And finally, not to leave Iran out of it, I still believe, and that's a personal belief, I haven't seen any documents, that Iran is downplaying the numbers of cases and of the deaths that it has sustained from COVID-19. And if there is a message in today's number 3 episode, if there is any message I have for Iran particularly, it is please try to send Mrs. Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe back home. Her kid and her husband and her family need her, and just look at the PR kudos that you would achieve by sending her back to the UK instead of keeping her under house arrest with that fancy lock on her knee in Iran. That would be a show of generosity that Iranians are so famous for despite all the challenges. And what's the broader, global, more universal message is, well, I gave you so many examples, from the sublime to the ridiculous. But what we need to do is to be steadfast, to be strong. This is only the beginning of the journey. It's not incidentally the beginning only of my YouTube journey or trail. It is the beginning of a whole load of experiences in the UK, in Europe, in the Middle East, North Africa and Gulf regions, and in other parts of the world that I cannot speak about. So good luck. Wash your hands for 20 seconds. Try to apply social distancing, and please be careful so that you can be safe and therefore you can be well. This is number 3 out.